I'm going to have you help me with this. Make it so that they just redid this. Make it so it doesn't make any noise.
I believe you can just turn down the volume here to 0.
Okay, so it won't make
muted.
any.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. They just did this computer.
Okay.
They just put Windows 11 in it, and I'm like, uh-oh, everything's going to be pinging.
Well, let me send you an email to test if it works. All right?
Yeah,
I'm going to send her an email.
Okay.
All right, Joy. Testing. Send.
come on.
No ping,
No, nothing.
but you
Okay.
got it.
I got it on my
Okay.
thing here. So what I'm going to do is,
Yeah, let's make sure.
and this didn't make any.
All right.
Oh, for freak's sake.
No one's touched it.
Don't mind me. I'm Matt Lauer.
Yeah, I got you. Check. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Check.
It's the National Center for Suburban Studies, if that matters.
It does.
It says Universities Center.
Loud and clear, thank you.
Maybe more of a rationale for why I'd be here, that it's a national.
It sounds
scope.
low. Hold on. I can bring it up a little bit. Is that better? Check. 3, 2, 1. Elon Musk. Okay. Jesus. Larry.
Since I've been gone?
Today's my first day.
When did you get to Newsday TV?
Or
Or were you at Newsday before that?
No, I wasn't. I was at Cheddar News.
Oh, yeah.
Before that, I was at NBC4 New York.
You work with Jill?
Jill?
Wagner?
Wagner?
Yeah.
Yeah, in passing, because
Passing.
we were different shifts. But yeah, I know her. Like, we worked a couple times together. We are live at 11:30. I'm Ken Bufa. Thanks for joining Newsday TV's special coverage of the presidential inauguration. Now, Donald Trump is set to be sworn in for his second term in office. And this year, the weather forced organizers to make big changes to the entire day's events. Joining me now are Newsday columnists Joy Brown and Larry Levy, Executive Dean of Hofstra University's National Center for Suburban Studies. Okay, so let's talk about the last-minute changes when it came to the weather. Joy, what's your take?
Well, baby, it's cold outside. Last time, having been to a number of inaugurations, it can get really, really cold. Now, this one they put back inside. Last one was Ronald Reagan when it was 7 degrees. This time around, it's not that cold, but with the wind chill, as our Newsday TV meteorologist Rich Van Olen pointed out to us, it would put us in the negative digits. So it makes sense for them to want to go inside.
Of course, this doesn't stop the social media conspiracy theorists for saying this is all about security, or if you're from the other side of the spectrum, it's about wanting to get in the face of everybody about January 6th by holding his inauguration in the very spot where people took over the Capitol after he lost the 2020 election.
And also, I just wanted to
some
point out real quick
Yeah.
on the screen, Long Island native Macchio is singing the national anthem. Let's take a listen. Obviously not the national anthem, but he is singing.
I think it's God Bless America.
Yes.
Calling me, you are calling me to pay true to thee, I will be.
This is Christopher Macchio. He actually said that Trump went to him at Mar-a-Lago before at a different event and was actually invited back for the inauguration today.
Wounded heart, I will keep you in my keeping till there'll be a new
Yeah, you can see Hakeem Jeffries there, and behind him is outgoing President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, Joe, you were about to say something. What's
Well,
up?
I always got to say is, we want to give a shout out to Holbrook.
Of course,
Because
yeah.
that's where Chris Macchio is from.
And this gives us a chance to talk a little bit about how Trump got back to this, watching Biden and Harris. It can't be a very happy day for them, obviously. There's the very poignant question of, and an ironic one, of how Joe Biden, who ran to bring civility and to banish Trump forever from the national scene, paved the way through some of his actions and inactions for bringing Trump back.
Yeah,
Well,
you can
meanwhile,
see,
we're taking a look at J.D. Vance
Yeah.
come through as well.
his wife is already there, the millennial J.D. Vance, very young guy,
Right.
maybe going to get past the torch once Donald Trump is done with his presidency. What do you think is going through his mind right now?
Don't trip, but seriously, I don't know that there's any one thing. I think that it's more about taking in the moment and being present. I think these are overwhelming events for people, and that all our assumptions about calculation and considerations of future plans, I think they get overwhelmed by that.
Well, beyond that, look at where this is. I don't know if you've ever been in the Capitol Rotunda,
Sure.
but it is a place that will leave you silent.
Yes.
And the last time we were in the Capitol Rotunda, I just want to remind you, is when Jimmy Carter was lying in state. It is a profound place. They're surrounded by everything this nation stands for.
And that's what made
Statues.
January 6th so painful.
Yeah.
Exactly for the reasons that Joy described.
We're seeing
Chuck
our
Schumer.
own Chuck Schumer come
Yeah.
through,
Reese Johnson and so as well.
and also
House Speaker Johnson right there. Also, making sure that the flags around the Capitol are being flown at full mast. The one on top of the White House is still at half mast for Jimmy Carter, who just passed away. But as we know, President-elect Donald Trump wanted to make sure that the flags were at full mast because this is a celebration of his accomplishment as returning to president, also a celebration of democracy for the race to the White House.
Well, for that reason, also Governor Hochul took a suggestion from the Staten Island Bureau Chief, and all flags in New York State can be at full mast as well for today.
Gotcha. And there he is, President-elect Donald Trump.
Looking grim. The official picture he took for the inauguration was something out of David Lynch. It was lit from below. It showed him extremely stern. It's the kind of look that I think people, when he was a full-time businessman, he used to look across the negotiating table and wonder, do I really want to take this guy on?
And that was intention. I mean, this is his time.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, absolutely. This is a different second term we'll likely see. That photo, some were saying, was all about business, like you were mentioning, and he means business this second term. We understand that there are dozens, if not more than 100 executive orders that will be signed once he is sworn in. Right now, we can see Melania Trump coming down, and behind her, some executives, some tech executives, including Tim Cook. We see some Barron there, who's obviously going to college in New York. Tall young man, looks a lot like his father, always close to his father, by his side when the election didn't go Donald Trump's way back in 2020.
Well, you can also see Elon Musk is back there. Mark Zuckerberg, we saw earlier.
That's right.
Bezos is there.
Bezos
Cook
is there. And it's interesting, they also have plus ones, which is huge for this, because every seat when it comes to this inauguration was accounted for. Right. So not only inviting Jeff Bezos, but also his wife, and Zuckerberg, I believe, came alone, but there was also Sundar Pichai from Google. Elon Musk is there.
I think Zuckerberg's wife was there.
Wife is there as well?
Okay.
Yeah. The President of the
So the
United
three
States
people you just
and the Vice
mentioned are
President
$1
of the
trillion
United States.
in combined wealth, which is equal to the 65–70% of the rest of the country.
Yeah, and they're also sitting in front of some of his cabinet picks, so they obviously have better seats than them. Let's take a listen in.
Here we come, the congressional leaders.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden Jr., and Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Kamala Davis.
I believe this is his last hail to the chief. It's also the end of decades of public service.
I mean, he has
for Joe
gone
Biden.
through those doors countless times, and he'll be leaving later today on Marine One as Donald Trump takes the helm for President of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, escorting the Vice President-elect, the Executive Director for the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Mr. Michael Wagner, Senate Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms and Doorkeeper, Jason Bell, and House Deputy Sergeant-at-Arms, Mr. Sean Keating. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President-elect of the United States, the Honorable J.D. Vance.
Vance is the third youngest person to be sworn in as vice president, even as Trump is the oldest person to be sworn in by several months, older than Biden was 4 years ago. And there's that contrast you were talking about, the intergenerational.
A millennial.
Yep. One thing he won't say is, "Really, Boomer?" to his boss. You can count on that.
Well, he could, Trump could well be the last boomer, and I'm going to say it's about time.
And what a story for J.D. Vance, coming from his humble beginnings, obviously dealing with a mother with substance abuse, getting raised by his grandmother, and then climbing the ranks all the way to vice president of the United States. Also really turning a page at that debate against Tim Walz, showing his softer sides, being more apologetic, trying to find even ground, and really showing that it's not just aggressiveness that he is trying to bring to the office, but also some sincerity, I'm going to use as the word. What do you think about that, Ty?
Well, I think a Democratic skeptic might say that it was a cynical, planned shift in who he was and how he described himself and what his goals were. But that's politics, and he is shown that he is a masterful politician who can shift when he has to. And is that horrible? No. It's up to his opponents to do a better job of pointing that out in a way that resonates with voters. And the Democrats could not do that. They couldn't do it for Kamala Harris, and they couldn't do it for Tim Walz.
Well, but the other thing is he's masterful at what he does. He's a master at he can craft a message, and he can send that message. He can send that message in a very compelling way, and that's what got them the votes that they needed this time around.
Right, and Vance especially is a really smart guy.
Yes.
There's no question about
Absolutely.
that. You can hate his politics, you can hate him personally, but this guy is a brilliant tactician and strategist.
And what do you think he was doing when talking about debate, and as he was finding that common ground with Tim Walz? Is he also trying to kind of set the scene for what could come after these 4 years behind Trump? Do you think he's going to be able to carry the torch and not only be able to energize the MAGA folks, but also try to get some of those swing voters who want a more steadier hand when it comes to the Oval Office?
4 months is a long time in politics. 4 years is almost impossible to predict. There are going to be a lot of Republicans who are going to want to carry that torch. A lot of them are in that room. Some of them you probably haven't heard much about at this point. It really depends upon how the Trump presidency plays out, how the economy goes, how world affairs go, the image of the Republican Party 4 years from now. It could be dramatically different. So it's really impossible, I think, to tell who's going to carry that torch.
That said, J.D. Vance, as we said, is a smart guy. He knows daggone well that this is his audition.
Right.
And it's going to be kind of an interesting thing because Veeps are not traditionally the people who are out front, So he's got to figure out a way to be a loyal Veep while at the same time auditioning for the biggest job.
Sure. And then there's the Trump sons. I mean, there is always gossip about how they want to make this a family affair, the presidency.
Well, we now are looking at the
Well, I'm going to say his
President-elect.
strategizing and his I guess energy to become the next president starts now, and see how he does in these next couple of moments as President Donald Trump, or soon to be President rather Donald Trump again, will take the podium and give a speech.
Well, they got to be sworn in first.
Sworn in first, and then we do the
I
speech.
think JD
There we
gets
go.
sworn in first.
I got a little smile there.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Also, what's interesting is Donald Trump's purple tie. We're used to that red power tie that he usually wears. Do you think that this is a symbol, because obviously blue and red, purple making that color, do you think this is a symbol of unison? What do you think about his tie choice?
Well, we have at least 5 minutes of hopefulness that he will deliver the unity speech that he's been talking about. Purple, obviously, a symbol of the combination of red and blue, and a Democrat and Republican. We refer to the suburban swing voter as the purple people. And you can hope that his speech is aimed at those moderates, some of whom stayed out of the election by not voting, some of whom have decided to take a chance again on Donald Trump, and that it's not a speech aimed at just his supporters.
Welcome to
Let's
the
listen in.
60th presidential inauguration. Today, President-elect Trump
Amy Klobuchar.
and Vice President-elect Vance will take their oaths of office, and we will witness the peaceful transfer of power at the heart of our democracy. For the past year, I've chaired the inaugural ceremony committee, which includes the leadership of Congress from both parties. We thank the committee and Capitol staff and law enforcement who worked so hard over the last year, and especially the last 3 days. You've done a beautiful job, and you have shown grace under pressure. Our theme this year is our enduring democracy. The presence of so many presidents and vice presidents here today is truly a testament to that endurance. We welcome President Biden and Dr. Biden. We welcome Vice President Harris and Doug Emhoff, President Obama, President Clinton and Secretary Clinton, President Bush and Laura Bush, Vice President Pence, Vice President Quayle and Marilyn Quayle. The justices of the United States Supreme Court are with us, all 9 of them I counted, and of course the Trump and Vance families. This ceremony marks what will soon be 250 years of our democracy. It is the moment when leaders, elevated by the will of the people, promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish and defend it. It is the moment when they become, we all should be, the guardians of our country. Through war and peace, through adversity and prosperity, we hold this inauguration every 4 years, and today it falls on Martin Luther King Day. A further reminder that we must strive to uphold the values enshrined in our Constitution, the freedoms, the liberties, and, as is inscribed on the entrance of the United States Supreme Court, equal justice under law. But what makes this moment more than a passing ceremony is all who are watching it across the country, the people of this nation, the ordinary people doing extraordinary things. President Kennedy, who at one point worked as a senator in this building and would often walk through this very rotunda, once said, "In a democracy, every citizen, regardless of interest in politics, holds office. None of us is in a position of responsibility." With that responsibility of citizenship comes an obligation not to seek out malice, as President Lincoln once reminded us, but to view others with a generosity of spirit despite our differences. With that responsibility of leadership comes an obligation to stand our ground when we must and find common ground when we can. With everything swirling around us, the hot mess of division, it is on us, to quote an incredible songwriter who just happened to be born in my state, to ensure that our nation's democracy is our shelter from the storm. There's a reason this ceremony takes place at the Capitol. In other countries, it might be in a presidential palace or a gilded executive office building. Here it is traditionally held at the Capitol, the People's House. It is a fitting reminder of the system of checks and balances that is the very foundation of our government, 3 equal branches of government. That is how, for nearly 250 years, our great American experiment, grounded in the rule of law, has endured. So, as we inaugurate a new president and vice president, let us remember that the power of those in this room comes from the people, the construction workers who build our country, the teachers and healthcare workers who nurture us, the troops defending our freedoms, and yes, the firefighters in Los Angeles putting themselves on the line for us. Our democracy's strength and grit must match theirs. May God bless our nation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Endurance through the years is the ultimate test. To persevere through time is the truest measure of an idea, an institution, and a nation. Our founders wrote the Constitution so that America could withstand all the twists and turns of time. They wrote it to guide us and to preserve forever our right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But as much as the truths and principles enshrined in our Constitution remain the same, our democracy promises the American people the power to change, to chart their own destiny. That's the beauty. That is the importance of democracy. It allows the endurance, the permanence of a nation through change. It allows nations like our United States both to avoid the obstacles and to seize the opportunities God has placed before us, all while staying true to our founding principles. Today is our country's 60th inauguration ceremony. Like all the others before it, it is a celebration of our right to set our uniquely American course. The past several years have been trying at times for many, many Americans, and also for the nations of the free world that we humbly strive to lead. In November, Americans chose again to steer this nation to greatness, the secure, safe, and prosperous future that our founders envisioned for all of us. And today, we celebrate not only their decision to do so, but also the simple right and wisdom of a free people to make their own choice so that their nation might endure. And now, allow me to welcome Archbishop Timothy Dolan and Franklin Graham, who will deliver our invocation. Please rise.
Be still and know that I am God, supreme among the nations, supreme on the earth. Let us pray. Remembering General George Washington on his knees at Valley Forge, recalling Abraham Lincoln at his second inaugural, with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Remembering General George Patton's instructions to his soldiers as they began the Battle of the Bulge 8 decades ago. Pray. Pray when fighting. Pray alone. Pray with others. Pray by night. Pray by day. Observing the birthday of the Reverend Martin Luther King, who warned, without God, efforts turn to ashes. We, blessed citizens of this one nation under God, humbled by our claim that in God we trust, gather indeed this inauguration day to pray for our President Donald J. Trump, his family, his advisors, his cabinet, his aspirations, his vice president, for the Lord's blessings upon Joseph Biden, for our men and women in uniform, for each other whose hopes are stoked this new year, this inauguration day. We cannot err in relying upon that prayer from the Bible, upon which our president will soon place his hand in oath, as we make our own the supplications of King Solomon for wisdom as he began his governance. God of our fathers, in your wisdom you set man to govern your creatures, to govern in holiness and justice, to render justice with integrity. Give our leader wisdom, for he is your aware of his own weakness and brevity of life. If wisdom which comes not from you be not with him, he shall be held in no esteem. Send wisdom from heavens that she may be with him, that he may know your designs. Please, God, bless America. Please mend her every flaw. You are the God in whom we trust, who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.
Mr. President, the last 4 years, there are times I'm sure you thought it was pretty dark. But look what God has done. We praise him and give him glory. Let us pray. Our God, thou hast said, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. As the prophet Daniel prayed, blessed be the name of God forever and ever. For wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings. He raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. Our Father, today, as President Donald J. Trump takes the oath of office once again, we come to thank you, O Lord our God. Father, when Donald Trump's enemies thought he was down and out, you and you alone saved his life and raised him up with strength and power by your mighty hand. We pray for President Trump that you'll watch over, protect, guide, direct him. Give him your wisdom from your throne on high. We ask that you would bless him and that our nation would be blessed through him. We ask that you would bless and protect Melania as First Lady. We thank you for the beauty, the warmth, and grace that she shows not only to this nation, but to the whole world. We thank you for Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and his wife Usha and their young family. May he be a strength to President Trump, to stand beside him, to hold up his arms like Aaron held up the arms of Moses in the midst of battle. The prophet Samuel reminded the people, it was you that brought from the land of Egypt. And he said, now stand still that I may reason with you before the Lord. So Father, we take this moment to stand still, to remember the great things that you have done for this nation. Thank you for the protection, the bounty, the freedoms that we so enjoy. We remember to keep our eyes fixed on you, and may our hearts be inclined to your voice. We know that America can never be great again if we tax on you. We ask for your help, and we pray all of this in the name of the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, your Son, my Savior, and our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Associate Justice Kavanaugh to administer the Vice Presidential Oath of Office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear.
I, James David Vance, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
on which I am about to enter.
enter. So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Justice Roberts to administer the presidential oath of office.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
J.D. Vance sworn in first, then Donald Trump sworn in after, going over to shake Joe Biden's hand quickly after. A peaceful transfer of power here today.
Yeah, it's always comforting for our democracy and for our country. Now, basically, we're all waiting with the proverbial bated breath to see if Trump's speech mirrors his tie, which, as we noted, was purple, but as we saw closer, had little splotches of red and blue. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to see. Is he going to try to unite the country as best as he can, build bridges from his MAGA base to the more moderate suburban Long Island type swing voters? It probably would be better for the country if he did that. He didn't the first time around, started out that way, then veered off. But that's really the question. He's going to issue a lot of conservative executive orders that are going to try to remake the country in the image that his supporters would like to see. Question is, how does it play? How is it framed for, again, these moderate swing voters?
Absolutely. And Joey, anything that stood out for you, him going over, shaking Joe Biden's hand, even his speeches prior, some of them mentioning how important the Constitution, democracy is, another pointing to God, embracing God. Anything stand out to you?
Well, first off, there are people and then there are the positions. Mm-hmm. President to president now, right? So you have to give the handshake. Mm-hmm. No matter what your personal views are, the man has been elected to the highest office in our nation. And you're there. As I said, Joe Biden walked through that Capitol a million times. He knows the significance of this, and he knows that you can't scowl or do anything like that. And I wouldn't have expected him to. So,
by the same token, Trump didn't show up in 2020.
That's true, but that speaks to to Donald Trump. I mean, in this particular instance where I would say that Joe Biden is traditionalist, he's a fundamentalist when it comes to these things. But I want to talk a little bit about the speech we may or may not be hearing. Remember, all of these inauguration speeches are a reflection of their time. They're standing in a place where Jimmy Carter, the lay in state for a while. Now, his speech was delivered right after Watergate. He emphasized moral renewal. Ronald Reagan, economic stagnation. He wanted deregulation and conservative principles.
Morning in America.
Morning in America. Then we have H.W. Bush. He wanted a collaborative post-Cold War address, right? Kind of taking the lead in the world. Then we had Barack Obama come through. That's post-economic. And he wants hope and pragmatism. Then we had W come through. And he wanted compassion, right? And then we had Donald Trump. Now he broke from the traditional inaugural optimism. And then Biden comes back and he's talking right after insurrection and division. He's talking about unity and he's talking about democracy. So this is a second Trump term.
Right.
You know, do we expect him to go the way he did in 2017? Right. Or is he going to be more like optimistic?
Right.
Based on his comments last night, I don't think we're going to see a lot of optimism here.
So based on your excellent historical sweep, my takeaway is that there's often a very big difference from what's expressed, generally, in particular, the optimism of an inaugural speech and what actually turns out. Because every one of those presidents had a difficult time in office. They ended up in very different places than they expected.
But all of those presidents also, because the inaugural address, they also laid down some policies, right? And in all of those presidents, you're right, they had some failures, but they also had some successes. And you can chart them against what they said in that inaugural address. And I think for this inaugural address, we're going to see not just his tone, not whether he wants to be optimistic, not whether he wants, whatever he wants to be, you're going to get some promises in there somewhere. So in 4 years, we'll be able to look back and see where his successes and where this president's failures were, just as we were able to do with all those who came before.
How do you feel about the fact that although, yes, we see what happens in public, but also what happens in private is important? Because as we're watching this, there was news that Biden pardoned other family members to protect them from, quote, Trump attacks. We saw them shake hands. We see this is all very civil, but in the background, this is going on. So how should the American people view that as well?
Yeah.
Well, as controversial as all the pardons were, they actually make it easier for Trump to now provide a rationale for pardoning a lot of the January 6th folks and some other people who've been swept up in some of his own indictments and prosecutions. But it also is a chance for Trump to say, look, let's move on. I'm going to pardon my people. He pardoned his people. I don't think that's going to happen. In fact, I'm interested to listen to whether Trump even mentions the pardons, because that'll tell you whether he's still in grievance mode or not.
Yes, and we're just going to listen in right now because I believe Trump is about to take the podium. So let's all listen in as the 47th President of the United States begins to speak.
Thank you very much, everybody. Well, thank you very, very much. Vice President Vance, Speaker Johnson, Senator Thune, Chief Justice Roberts, Justices of the United States Supreme Court, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, President Biden, Vice President Harris, and my fellow citizens. The golden age of America begins right now. From this day forward, our country will flourish and be respected again all over the world. We will be the envy of every nation, and we will not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of any longer. During every single day of administration, I will very simply put America first. Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. And our top priority will be to create a nation that is proud, prosperous, and free. America will soon be greater, stronger, and far more exceptional than ever before. I return to the presidency confident and optimistic that we are at the start of a thrilling new era of national success. A tide of change is sweeping the country, sunlight is pouring over the entire world, and America has the chance to seize this opportunity like never before. But first, we must be honest about the challenges we face. While they are plentiful, they will be annihilated by this great momentum that the world is now witnessing in the United States of America. As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of, for many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair. We now have a government that cannot manage even a simple crisis at home, while at the same time stumbling into a continuing catalog of catastrophic events abroad. It fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. We have a government that has given unlimited funding to the defense of foreign borders, but refuses to defend American borders or, more importantly, its own people. Our country can no longer deliver basic services in times of emergency, as recently shown by the wonderful people of North Carolina, been treated so badly, and other states who are still suffering from a hurricane that took place many months ago, or more recently, Los Angeles, where we're watching fires still tragically burn from weeks ago without even a token of defense. They're raging through the houses and communities, even affecting some of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals in our country, some of whom are sitting here right now. They don't have a home any longer. That's interesting. But can't let this happen. Everyone is unable to do anything about it. That's going to change. We have a public health system that does not deliver in times of disaster, yet more money is spent on it than any country anywhere in the world. And we have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves in many cases, to hate our country despite the love that we try so desperately to provide to them. All of this will change starting today, and it will change very quickly. My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place, and to give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. From this moment on, America's decline is over. Our liberties and our nation's glorious destiny will no longer be denied, and we will immediately restore the integrity, competency, and loyalty of America's government. Over the past 8 years, I have been tested and challenged more than any president in our 250-year history, and I've learned a lot along the way. The journey to reclaim our republic has not been an easy one, that I can tell you. Those who wish to stop our cause have tried to take my freedom and indeed to take my life. Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved, God, to make America great again. Thank you. Thank you very much. That is why each day under our administration of American patriots, we will be working to meet every crisis with dignity and power and strength. We will move with purpose and speed to bring back hope, prosperity, safety, and peace for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day. It is my hope that our recent presidential election will be remembered as the greatest and most consequential election in the history of our country. As our victory showed, the entire nation is rapidly unifying behind our agenda with dramatic increases in support from virtually every element of our society, young and old, men and women, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, urban, suburban, rural, and very importantly, we had a powerful win in all 7 swing states, and the popular vote, we won by millions of people. To the Black and Hispanic communities, I want to thank you for the tremendous outpouring of love and trust that you have shown me with your vote. We set records, and I will not forget it. I've heard your voices in the campaign, and I look forward to being with you in the years to come. Today is Martin Luther King Day, and his honor, this will be a great honor, but in his honor we will strive together to make his dream a reality. We will make his dream come true. Thank you. Thank you. National unity is now returning to America, and confidence and pride is soaring like never before. In everything we do, my administration will be inspired by a strong pursuit of excellence and unrelenting success. We will not forget our country, we will not forget our Constitution, and we will not forget our God. Can't do that. Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. all illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy. I will end the practice of catch and release. And I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. Under the orders I signed today, we will also be designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that no one has ever seen before. Next, I will direct all members of my cabinet to marshal the vast powers at their disposal to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bring down costs and prices. The inflation crisis was caused by massive overspending and escalating energy prices, and that is why today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will baby drill. America will be a manufacturing nation once again, and we have something that no other manufacturing nation will ever have, the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we are going to use it. Let me use it. We will bring prices down, fill our strategic reserves up again, right to the top, and export American energy all over the world. We will be a rich nation again, and it is that liquid gold under our feet that will help to do it. With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal and will revoke the electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers. In other words, you'll be able to buy the car of your choice. We will build automobiles in America again at a rate that nobody could have dreamt possible just a few years ago. And thank you to the auto workers of our nation for your inspiring vote of confidence. We did tremendously with their vote. I will immediately begin the overhaul of our trade system to protect American workers and families. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. For this purpose, we are establishing the External Revenue Service to collect all tariffs, duties, and revenues. It will be massive amounts of money pouring into our Treasury. coming from foreign sources. The American dream will soon be back and thriving like never before. To restore competence and effectiveness to our federal government, my administration will establish the brand new Department of Government Efficiency. After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents. Something I know something about. We will not allow that to happen. It will not happen again. Under my leadership, we will restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law. And we are going to bring law and order back to our cities. This week, I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. This week, I will reinstate any service members who were unjustly expelled from our military for objecting to the COVID vaccine mandate with full back pay. And I will sign an order to stop our warriors from being subjected to radical political theories and social experiments while on duty. It's going to end immediately. Our armed forces will be freed to focus on their sole mission, defeating America's enemies. Like in 2017, we will again build the strongest military the world has ever seen. We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars that we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. My proudest legacy will be that of a peacemaker and unifier. That's what I want to be, a peacemaker and a unifier. I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, one day before I assumed office, the hostages in the Middle East are coming back home to their families. Thank you. America will reclaim its rightful place as the greatest, most powerful, most respected nation on earth, inspiring the awe and admiration of the entire world. A short time from now, we are going to be changing the name of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and we will restore the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley, where it should be and where it belongs. President McKinley made our country very rich through tariffs and through talent. He was a natural businessman and gave Teddy Roosevelt the money for the great things he did, including the Panama Canal, which has foolishly been given to the country of Panama after the United States. The United States, I mean, think of this, spent more money than ever spent on a project before and lost 38,000 lives in the building of the Panama Canal. We have been treated very badly from this foolish gift that should have never been made, and Panama's promise to us has been broken. The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China, we gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. Above all, my message to Americans today is that it is time for us to once again act with courage, vigor, and the vitality of history's greatest civilization. So as we liberate our nation, we will lead it to new heights of victory and success. We will not be deterred. Together we will end the chronic disease epidemic and keep our children healthy and disease-free. The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars. Ambition is the lifeblood of a great nation. And right now our nation is more ambitious than any other. There's no nation like our nation. Americans are explorers, builders, innovators, entrepreneurs, and pioneers. The spirit of the frontier is written into our hearts. The call of the next great adventure resounds from within our souls. Our American ancestors turned a small group of colonies on the edge of a vast continent into a mighty republic of the most extraordinary citizens on earth. No one comes close. Americans pushed thousands of miles through a rugged land of untamed wilderness. They crossed deserts, scaled mountains, braved told dangers, won the Wild West, ended slavery, rescued millions from tyranny, lifted billions from poverty, harnessed electricity, split the atom, launched mankind into the heavens, and put the universe of human knowledge into the palm of the human hand. If we work together, there is nothing we cannot do and no dream we cannot achieve. Many people thought it was impossible for me to stage such a historic political comeback. But as you see today, here I am. The American people have spoken. I stand before you now as proof that you should never believe that something is impossible to do. In America, the impossible is what we do. From New York to Los Angeles, from Philadelphia to Phoenix, from Chicago to Miami, from Houston to right here in Washington, D.C., our country was forged and built by the generations of patriots who gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. They were farmers and soldiers, cowboys and factory workers, steel workers and coal miners, police officers and pioneers who pushed onward, marched forward, and let no obstacle defeat their spirit or their pride. Together they laid down the railroads, raised up the skyscrapers, built great highways, won 2 world wars, defeated fascism and communism, and triumphed over every single challenge that they faced. After all we have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in American history. With your help, we will restore America promise, and we will rebuild the nation that we love, and we love it so much. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. So to every parent who dreams for their child, and every child who dreams for their future, I am with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. We're going to win like never before. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. In recent years, our nation has suffered greatly, but we are going to bring it back and make it great again, greater than ever before. We will be a nation like no other, full of compassion, courage, and exceptionalism. Our power will stop all wars and bring a new spirit to a world that has been angry, violent, and totally unpredictable. America will be respected again and admired again, including by people of religion, faith, and goodwill. We will be prosperous. We will be proud. We will be strong, and we will win like never before. We will not be conquered. We will not be intimidated. We will not be broken, and we will not fail. From this day on, the United States of America will be a free, sovereign, independent nation. We will stand bravely. We will live proudly. We will dream boldly, and nothing will stand in our way because we are Americans. The future is ours, and our golden age has just begun. Thank you. God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, President Donald Trump delivering his inaugural address in the rotunda. Right off the bat, just want to say ties can only do so much. So I just want to get that out of the way. But a lot of things said in that inauguration speech. Joy, I want to start with you and kind of the tone he was setting at the beginning when he was talking about he wants America to be the envy of every nation, not allow ourselves to be taken advantage of, make sure America first. He's finishing up there saying, in recent years, our nation has suffered greatly. What kind of tone was he setting right off the jump of that speech?
Well, he says, I'm going to jump in there and change everything from the way schools, I mean, he used the phrase manifest destiny, which we haven't heard in a long, long time. If I had to thematically, he's talking about a revolution of what he called common sense, right? He's saying we need to reshape American institutions and policies to better serve the American people. He used Martin Luther King to say, hey, basically, and this is part of political speech, black people, you voted for me, I'm going to do something for you. Latino people, you voted for me, and guess what? He's right about that. He did have a huge surge of support from a lot of different people in a lot of different areas. Probably the most significant support that Republicans have ever seen across different groups. You can't say that's not true because that is true.
You can argue with how much it was
We can argue
proportionally, but you're absolutely correct.
You can't argue with what it was. You can
Right.
argue how much it was or how significant it
absolutely.
was, but you can't argue with what it was. He also proclaimed the beginning of what he called the golden age of America. And this, we had some pessimism in there, like from 2016, but he also talked a lot about optimism. There was some optimism in this speech. And he talked a bit about what he felt was the potential for prosperity. Now, we can go on.
We will go on, but you mentioned right at the beginning this felt more like an election night speech.
Yeah, it was kind of a combination. Well, first of all, it was the 2016 speech with different details and a little more of what Joy just referenced, a little more optimism, especially at the end. He got to what I would consider the unity portion of it, the softer, let's all come together portion of it. And it was smart for him to have ended there, because the last thing, obviously, that people remember. But this was a kind of a combination of an election night speech and a State of the Union. A lot of details. He spent a lot of time on his grievances. And, it almost makes no sense to try to fact check, because there's almost no way you can do that without sounding like a partisan opponent. I mean, there were innumerable inconsistencies, exaggerations that we've come to expect, and people don't seem to care all that much about.
And speaking of which, we're going to get back to this. There's a lot to unpack. Let's go to Carrie Underwood as this is getting wrapped up, and we'll be right back to talk more about what was said in that speech.
From sea to shining sea.
A lot going on in this speech, and I kind of made chunks of the most standout moments. I want to talk about when he mentioned the scales of justice will be rebalanced, weaponization of our Justice Department will end, and we'll also have a government that does not fail to protect our American citizens. Joy, your takeaways.
Well, I mean, there's a read that tells you why Joe Biden, at the last minute, pardoned his brothers and his sisters and other members of the family. Weaponized against who? Weaponized against what? So if you don't want them to do this, the question becomes, and the open question is, what do you want them to do? And clearly, he went after a lot of Joe Biden's policies without mentioning Joe Biden. He talked about, how he had been persecuted and prosecuted.
I was going to say, your thoughts on that, because you mentioned just a moment ago that he likes to talk about himself, how he was the one that was being sought out. He used the word witch hunt, not here, but in various different rallies. How did he cement that point in this speech?
Well, he started cementing it even before the speech with the people who he's nominated to run the Justice Department and the FBI. He clearly wants to clean house of anybody who might have been in any way a part of any of the prosecutions involving him and his administration. He has to be careful there. That's the kind of stuff that the moderate, middle-of-the-road voter didn't really elect him to do. They want to see the economy improved. Regardless of what the metrics are, we have one of the strongest economies by the numbers that we've had since we began, counting the numbers. But that's not where the public sees it and not how the public feels it. So Trump wants to bring down prices. Well, the public is going to be focusing on that. The public wants to see crime come down. Again, it doesn't matter that we have some of the lowest crime rates ever. They want to see progress on this. So Trump set the bar really, really high in terms of what he's going to accomplish. And the question is whether it's even possible for him to be able to accomplish those things. How is he going to bring prices down? Inflation's already tamed. But how do you actually bring the prices down? I'm not sure how you do that unless you go to a command and control economy, which that's the antithesis of Trump and his ethos.
Now, we're touching a little bit on executive orders, and we're not even there in this speech yet. I want to get to Latinos you mentioned and immigration. He said that Again, doubling down on his speech of saying they're sending criminals, people from mental institutions, people from their prisons. He also mentioned the government in unlimited funding to foreign countries but not Americans, even domestically saying North Carolina treated so badly they don't have a home any longer, and looked back at some of the folks that he has in attendance there. Talk a little bit about the message, or between the lines, as if while he's throwing the shade at President Biden and what he feels will change under his administration.
I don't think there's any between the lines in this speech at all. But just before I get to that, though, I want to talk a bit about there were a lot of promises that he made. And at some point in time, the public is going to grade him on those promises.
Right.
That said, in addition to that, he's the president and he gets to do policy, right? So let's talk about, so what you're asking about aren't his promises, you're asking about his policy initiatives. And he's very clear and very direct on what his policy initiatives are going to be. Immigration, he declared a national emergency at the southern border. He wants to
you're going into executive orders now.
And he did that the last time he was.
As I said,
all right, so let's jump to the executive orders. Let's jump to the executive orders because that's part of it.
We're not going to executive orders yet. I'm talking about the speech. Policy and immigration. We're going to declare that we're going to halt immigration and deport individuals without legal status. He says criminals. Technically, if you're here and you shouldn't be, you are a criminal.
Unless you're seeking asylum, which is not illegal.
We don't know what that is.
Right.
Secondly,
we don't know what he's going to do with it.
Initiatives, energy. He's like, a national energy emergency to expand domestic fossil fuel.
These are the executive orders he was going to say he's going to sign. Well, on the national emergency at southern border, he said reinstate Remain in Mexico policy, end the practice of catch and release, cartels being designated as foreign terrorist organization, Alien Enemies Act from 1998, saying foreign gangs using state and local authorities to try to defeat them, and also at the same time essentially bolstering our southern border, making sure these folks who are coming in here on terms that don't align with his beliefs or don't align with the law are dealt with.
That's right. And again, I'm getting to the policy initiatives.
Yes.
We'll see. We haven't seen what these executive orders are yet. I'd like to see it before I.
These are the ones that he was mentioning in his speech. Yes.
But he's also talking about, and this is where it's going to hit a little closer to home. Government reforms. He wants to end diversity and inclusion programs within federal agencies, and he says he wants to focus on what he called merit-based policy. Total turnaround from what the nation has been doing for the past few generations.
Right.
And I want to sneak in here 2 tiny points. One, I didn't hear anything about salt. I'm just saying, this Long Island.
That's right. If he's going to do a laundry list.
I didn't hear boo about.
Could have thrown that in.
That was at the top of the laundry basket.
Right.
So, and what was the other point you wanted to sneak in there?
I totally forgot what the other point was, but I'll remember it in a minute. Go, Larry.
You were listening to this. Obviously, when he's listing off these executive orders, what he's going to sign. What are your takes?
What I try to, when I listen to speeches like this, and not to just puff up what I do for a living at Hofstra, which is to focus on suburbanites, but I like to listen to how the moderate swing voter is going to listen to these things. There was an awful lot in there. Most of the speech was aimed at his MAGA red voters. A good part of the speech, especially at the beginning, was trashing Joe Biden and the Democratic supporters. I didn't hear a lot in there that resonated with those moderate swing voters. They're not interested in the Panama Canal. They're not interested in a number of the things that he elucidated in the list of grievances. They want to see inflation come down. They want to see certainly the perceptions of crime come down. He was elected on immigration. He was elected on inflation. And those are the 2 things where he is going to be judged right out of the box. And if he goes off on these other tangents, he's going to run into trouble, not just with the public, but with members of Congress in his own party. People talk about the lack of guardrails, that Trump now can do whatever he wants, they say, because he's got the Senate, and he's got the House, and he's got the Supreme Court. Well, there are a lot of other guardrails, and some of them are Republican members of Congress who were elected in districts that Kamala Harris won and Joe Biden won before it, who may want to be reelected one day and realize they can't go all that far wading as deeply into MAGA territory if they want their voters. They're largely suburban voters to vote for them. You have industry, the agricultural industry. When it comes to tariffs and all that we export, you've got on electric vehicles, you've got billions of dollars of investment by the auto industry. Not so much to shove electric vehicles down the throats of Americans, but to compete internationally with all the car makers who are taking more and more of that foreign export market. So there are a lot of people and industries, organizations that can bring pressure to keep Trump from going off, where it can get into trouble and get the nation into trouble.
Well,
Now,
I remember what I was going to say before. I read Project.
Thank God.
I read Project 2025. There's a heck of a lot of Project 2025 in here. And, you know, you're talking about guardrails and such. You know, I think he's probably got the best chance of any recent president of doing whatever the heck he wants. Because not only does he have the policies that he wants to do, but he has the means of implementing them. Because you got to remember, not only are we looking at his cabinet positions, but they are already auditioning people for roles. And part of this also is that they're going to take a look at the career civil servants in the government in Washington, D.C. These are the folks who come in and, you know, we got to stamp this and we got to do this and we do that. If they clean that out and replace them with the people that they want them to replace them to.
Much easier said than done. Let me reframe what you said about the chance that he has, unlike maybe any other president in our time. He has, ironically, for all the MAGA madness, as a Democrat might say, in the speech and in his campaign, he has the best chance, ironically, to bring the country together. Because he already has, to a degree of loyalty we have never seen, half the country. And as Joy pointed out earlier, you can argue over the numbers and how significant the shift was, but he had people voting for a Republican who had never voted for a Republican. And he's at a point where the country is in pretty good shape economically. Its standing in the world is relatively strong. We have billions, trillions in investment to bolster forward-looking industries like chips and computers, where we have been falling behind. And he can, if he can pull back from the campaign rhetoric, from the need to remind everybody how angry and uncomfortable that he made them. This is the swing voters. He has a chance to really make some progress in ways that everybody accuses him of dividing us.
And you mentioned the campaign, and right out of the campaign trail, we heard the saying, drill, baby, drill. Saying that he's going to declare a national energy emergency. He said that he's going to export American energy all over the world. He's going to get rid of the Green New Deal, revoke electrical vehicle mandates, which I thought was interesting with Elon Musk in attendance. Obviously, Tesla's a huge thing. But when he mentioned Mars, SpaceX, Elon Musk was overjoyed, it seemed like.
Fist pumping and thumb raising.
Thumbs up. So he also said that he will tariff and tax other countries to enrich our citizens. He was talking about his external revenue service, and he said, stop all government censorship, and we'll talk about it in a second. Do you think those touch points are enough for those who might be watching with unease to try to almost get a hook in some of them saying, you know what, maybe I do agree with that? Or do you feel that he's strictly talking to his base in that moment?
Well, there are people who hear that and agree with it. But there are also people who perhaps don't understand that almost throughout our economic history, tariffs have raised prices. Now, sometimes you can say the raising of prices is worthwhile because we're fighting a bigger fight. The American public didn't accept that in terms of Joe Biden, prices going up to fight the pandemic.
Okay, so right now, Christopher Macchio is going to, again, take the stage to sing. Again, Long Island native from Holbrook. Let's take a listen in, and we'll discuss in a moment.
What's a beauty we have at the twilight's last gleaming, whose blood stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight of the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's eagerly
Again, that is Christopher Macchio, Holbrook native here from Long Island, embracing Donald Trump. Donald Trump saluting while everyone else has their hand
Well,
on
he's
their
the
heart.
commander-in-chief.
He is the
military
commander-in-chief, so it makes sense
Sure.
in this
but
vein.
the other thing, too, I got to give it to Mr. Macchio.
Oh, yeah.
What a set of lungs.
What
Whoa.
a set of lungs, beautiful handling of the song. And the acoustics in that area must have been wild. I was watching, even Hillary Clinton was smiling there. Great performance, absolutely fantastic.
Back to the discussion. So when it comes to some of the other things he mentioned in that inauguration speech, I was at External Revenue Service. We're gonna move on. He talked about stopping all government censorship to bring back free speech to America. We're going to bring law and order back to our cities. We're going to have a society that is colorblind and that is merit-based. Joy, we'll start with you because Larry, we had left off with you. How do you feel about those remarks?
Well, colorblind and merit-based, what exactly, we kind of, what does that look like? We know what it doesn't look like, and you got a hint of it when he talked about education, because he talked about that our kids are feeling embarrassed by some of the things that they're learning in school. What kids?
Education system to be ashamed of themselves is what he was saying.
Right, because they're leaving our kids embarrassed. I don't know a lot of kids who are embarrassed about
To some
what they're
years, it sounds like he's saying that black kids and white kids should not learn about slavery, that they should not learn about some of the mistakes that this country has made. You can be a patriot and learn from the past. You can frame it in a way that maybe is a little more balanced to some years than others, but the reality is that's how those lines are heard. They are lines that divide. They are lines that puff up a revisionism of our history that took a long time for us to finally start to confront. And we're a better country if we understand our past, learn from it. To other years, what Joy was talking about sounds like it's okay that if you just want all white people on your executive board, it's okay to do it.
Well, he also mentioned in the same vein when it comes to kind of just mentioning topics that may touch others, only two genders, male and female, and service members who objected COVID vaccine will get full back pay for what they've chosen to do. Reaction to that?
Let's leave health. We'll get to health in just a second. But, it's interesting because he's speaking about excluding people in an inclusionary way. Right? So if you're gay, if you're the parents of a gay person, right? We're not even talking about trans at this point. He's while saying, we're going to do this, we're going to be bold, he's actually excluding people. And the people who are being excluded are going to know that. Well, the same thing is true with free speech. Free speech could be heard as a free for all. And we see where that's gotten us, where people can say anything about anything, anytime they want to. People can, you talked a bit about fact checking, where, truth isn't a defense. What is truth? Who is truth? Why is truth? So some of those things I think are a little bit dangerous. And I think on education, just to bolster a point that you made, the barn door is already open. Every kid on earth knows how to get any kind of information that they want from any source. And I don't think it would be hard to imagine that if you tell me what I can't do, I'm going to go do it anyway. So he may, want to regulate what's in schools, but these kids are going to do whatever they want to do. They're already forging relationships. Look at what happened with TikTok. So you have more people learning more about China and the Chinese culture off of red.
Oh, don't ask me. I'm not on TikTok.
Well, we can bridge a lot of different things here. So this top-down approach, you think it's going to work, and it may work, but it's not going to work the way you want it to because it's a different day now.
There's also the question of, in terms of trying to expand the Republican base and building on what he was able to accomplish in attracting some voters, as we said, had never voted Republican before, Black, Latino, Asian. We saw that on Long Island. We saw that in New York City. How do some of these voters, the Blacks, the Latinos, the Asians, react when they hear some of his rhetoric regarding explicitly and implicitly on race. I don't know that this helps him keep those people. I can imagine a black voter who said, let me try Trump, hearing some of this and say, oh yeah, maybe that wasn't such a smart thing to do because I didn't hear anything that resonated with me. Then again, perhaps a lot of Latino voters whose neighborhoods were the most affected by immigration policy. Easy for me, living in an upper middle class community, I didn't see any immigrants on the street. But if you lived on Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, and you ran a small business, in some cases you were overrun. So maybe some of this did resonate. Question is, how is he going to play from day forward when he actually has power and people are looking, are you dealing with the priorities that I voted for you for?
Just to clarify, well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Good.
No, just to clarify, I am on TikTok, but not that often. Also, I wanted to get to the next point, which is
look at that. The boomers are okay. The millennials defending themselves.
I'm mostly on Instagram. So he also said, and this is in order, and I want your take on this. He wants to be a peacemaker and a unifier. Right. Immediately after he says that, talks about the Gulf of America, right. Panama Canal. China's operating in it, and we didn't give it to China.
No, he said China's operating in it. China's definitely operating in it. They have a significant presence. And they're not operating it.
And we didn't give it to China.
Well, first off, the Panama Canal, if memory serves, is the U.S., Mexico, and Cuba, right? And it's run by, at this particular point, an agency within the Panama.
I don't think Cuba's part of that.
Well, but I'm sorry, I'm going to the Gulf of Mexico. Let's talk about the Gulf of Mexico.
Gulf of America.
I'm kind of these
executive orders are
the
signed.
The Gulf of Mexico. I'm sorry, Cuba, Mexico, and the United States. I believe the Spaniards named it back in the 1600s. It's accepted by different maps, and no one entity has the authority to change the name. Right.
There's an obscure agency run by cartographers that approve or make recommendations on name changes. But the reality is that most people are still going to call it the Gulf of Mexico.
Half of the nation may not.
Well, they may, but it's not going to be reinforced by anything that's official. It's the kind of thing that makes the voters who gave this election to Trump, the suburban swing voters who took a chance on him in 2016, turned their back on him in 2020, took a chance on him again by, I think, 4 or 5 points this time in 2024. Those are the ones who don't want to hear about Gulf of Mexico's. I'm not sure they want to hear about the Panama Canal. They don't share many of Trump's grievances. They want to see something done about crime or their perception of it, the economy and their perception of it, and immigration feeds into the bundle of both the economy and crime, the way the Republicans message it during the campaign.
And just to clarify, when I was talking about the Panama Canal,
right.
The U.S. had it till, I believe, 1999. And then they turned it over to an agency in Panama. As far as I know, China does not run it, although China runs through it, like every other nation in the world.
Right. And by the way, it was turned over by a Republican administration.
That's correct.
He mentioned the American people have spoken. Do you believe that when he says that, he is carrying their voice, all of their voices, or some, his own and his base?
It's a great question, and it's the kind that I usually try to avoid because there's almost no way to answer it without, again, sounding like a partisan, sounding like a never-Trumper. He did not get 50% of the vote, even though he won the popular vote. Winning popular vote is significant, but by a small margin. He got about 49% of the vote. He didn't get any more votes than he got in prior times. If he did, it was negligible. The election was basically won because a lot of folks who voted for Joe Biden did not vote at all. These are Democratic-leaning voters, plus the small share of blacks and Latinos and Asians who decided to take a chance this time.
With that, though, the man won.
No, the man definitely won.
He's saying he's not.
I understand.
A win is a win is a win.
But
when you're
and
claiming,
you know what? And he's going to say, I won. This is what the American people want. You know what? And he's got reason to say that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the question was, do you believe when he said the American people have spoken, is he carrying their voices, or his own and his base in that speech?
Well,
Oh, it was
let me,
clearly a speech aimed mostly at his MAGA supporters. There's no question about that.
Trey?
well, but at the by the same token, I will say that he did try to make it a little bit more expansive.
Yeah, I said mostly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
In which way?
Pardon me?
In which way?
Well, he talked about blacks. He talked
sure.
about Latinos.
Yeah.
He made when he was talking about different parts of the country, he would balance an urban center with a suburban center. I mean, he was whoever wrote that speech for him was trying very hard to sort of say, yo, dude, you had all these people voting for you. We want to do it again. We need these people again. And by the way, not just in presidential elections, New York State, we got a governor's race coming up. You know, we had Bruce Blakeman down there.
Yeah.
We had Peter King down there. We had a bunch of Long Island Republicans down there.
Mayor Eric Adams was invited to this.
Eric Adams was invited to this. They want to build on that momentum, and they want to build on that group of people. And by the way, on Long Island, they've done it 4 years.
Well, no, this year in New York State, it was a real mixed bag. Trump carried again, measured by percentages, Nassau County, but he didn't get any more votes than he got. Again, there was a fall off of people who stayed home, people who had voted Democratic. You also had 3 or 4 Republican seats in Congress flipped. Nationwide, the margins in Congress are even closer. The margins in the Senate expanded by a couple of seats, but nothing. You know, this is still a very, very closely divided country. And again, if you want a same mandate for the purposes of pumping up your supporters, that's great. But the reality is, if you try to get things done, if you push too far too fast, as if you have a real mandate, like you won 400 and something electoral votes, that you carried 56% of the popular vote, you're going to be in trouble, and you're going to imperil the things that you might have done that could really make a difference in the country.
Now, what we're seeing are images of President Joe Biden leaving right now, obviously incoming President Donald Trump, the President Donald Trump, number 47. I just want to ask, in this moment, what kind of White House is Joe Biden leaving for Trump, and what kind of White House is Trump ready to create?
White House? Well, first
administration.
Thank you. Well, first off, a couple of things.
I mean, beyond moving some pictures around.
One, you know, the helicopter actually landed on that lawn while they were before before the swearing in was going. It's been there waiting, and this is the traditional, you know, he's the handover, as it were. So he'll get in the helicopter, he'll go up, and he will go away the same way, incidentally, other presidents before him, including, by the way, Richard Nixon. That one I saw. In terms of what kind of administration is he coming into, you know, it's an administration that he's going to have his loyalists there. It's an administration where he is going to do what he wants to do. Again, I don't think there was any space between his policy initiatives. I think he's going to, well, we will see it when he begins to sign his executive orders. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of that. Some of those orders will be symbolic, won't mean anything. Some of those orders, they're going to sue.
This will be a true and total Trump White House, unlike the first one, which was a hybrid.
That's correct.
Of moderate and conservative Republicans, institutionalists, people who've been around a long time. He brought in key cabinet members who he didn't really know, who didn't, if you read their records closely over their careers, didn't really agree with a lot of Trump. And those folks pushed back and were hurtful in Trump's mind to the things he was trying to do. He's not going to make that same mistake again.
And here you go, you can see them making their way.
It's windy. Melania's got to hold on to that hat.
Any conspiracy theorist who thinks that they moved it inside for any other reason than the cold just has to watch Melania holding her hat and Trump kind of hunkering down in his collar.
Yeah, it is chilly. Rich Reynolds said, what, negative degrees when it came to the wind chill?
Oh, brutal.
Yeah, he said with the wind chill it would be in negative degrees. And he's about to go up and on.
This is one of the most iconic moments. I remember Richard Nixon taking off after he left in disgrace, as we say, and so many other presidents after that. This is the true symbol of the transfer of power.
Peaceful transfer of power in this case.
Right.
Now, was there anything
Peaceful
that's-
transfer of power in a military helicopter.
Exactly. When it comes to the suburbanites, like you mentioned, was there anything in that speech that really could have perked up their ears, even
Sure.
if they didn't vote for a President Donald Trump?
Salt.
Salt.
In this speech. In this
Salt.
speech.
Right.
In the speech, because there was no
Right.
salt.
State and
They
local
held
tax
the salt.
deductibility
Yeah.
would have been something that certainly would have perked up Long Islanders' ears. Oh, I think talking about bringing down prices, talking about reducing crime, talking about stemming the flow of immigrants who could change the face of some of the neighborhoods. We didn't see that much on Long Island, but you did see it in other places. That's what they're really listening for. I don't think some of the tough talk on foreign policy is something that Long Island homeowners think about. People who've invested their life savings in a home are concerned about the value of it, the quality of life and how that affects it, how crime affects it, how cost affects it. I think that when he starts messing with things like the Department of Education and the environmental protection agencies, that's going to have people listening in a way that's saying, wait, public schools are the biggest determinant of my home values. Do I really want messing with the status quo, which on Long Island is pretty good?
Yeah.
I mean, there are pockets of poor school districts where kids have been suffering for generations. Joy and I used to write about this all the time on the old Newsday editorial board. But they're going to be leery about messing with education, about messing with the quality of air and water in their neighborhoods. And these
Water is
agencies,
a huge thing on the island,
right,
as we know.
and even if you can make a case that you don't need a federal Department of Education, you don't need an EPA, as hard as that case might be, it's going to be the kind of thing that could cause them certainly symbolic political trouble. But right now it's just cost and it's crime. That's
Well,
what suburbanites are listening
The other
for.
thing you got to remember here is we've got one of our own in his administration. You got
That's
Lee
right.
Zeldin going in, and he's going into EPA.
That's right.
So-
And Zeldin, we've talked about this for years. Long Island is arguably the home of something that you could call, without snarkiness, green Republicans. People like Ed Romaine, the Suffolk County executive, Don Clavin, the Hempstead Town supervisor, and others who have come to realize that their constituents care mightily about the quality of the beaches and the bays and the oceans,
And the landfills and the
understand
water, the drinking
exactly
water as
how
well.
important the drinking water is, unless you want to start spending billions of dollars to pipe it down from the Catskills. And Lee Zeldin comes out of that tradition. Now, will he be a mouthpiece for the MAGA elements, the 2025 approach? Who knows? But that's not where he's come from, and it's one of those kind of quiet potential guardrails on the total evisceration of environmental controls.
So, same question to you, but perhaps the working class, those who have the blue-collar workers, those on Long Island, are there some things said in his speech that might have perked their ears up?
Well, first off, let's talk a bit about the middle class on Long Island. Middle class on Long Island has been weakening for decades. We have found ourselves economically being pulled to the very, very rich and the very, very poor. So in terms of middle class and bolstering the middle class, that's why I'm never going to let salt go, but lowering prices, right? That would have an impact. The state of the economy, jobs, being able to keep young people here, all of these things would help bolster a weakening middle class on Long Island. I would say that these things are not just important, I would say that they are absolutely essential. And I would also add that that's one of the reasons why Republicans on Long Island have begun to see more and more support.
And we have liftoff on Marine One as President Biden now leaves onto that iconic helicopter. What a moment. What in this moment should folks on Long Island be understanding?
That democracy continues, even if to some it may be arguably threatened. That we're seeing the end of one day and the start of a new day. I mean, it may sound cliched and corny, but that's what that means.
And Joy, what kind of legacy do you think Biden is leaving behind as he leaves?
He's going to leave behind a mixed legacy, but on the other hand, it's weird times. This is weird times. Now remember, this is the dude who came, the president, the former president who came in, you know, we have to save democracy. We will save democracy. There are people who feel, did he do that? Did he not do that? Here's a guy who said, well, you know, I am morally, you know, my son, let the system deal with him. He forgives his son. As time goes on, I think in anticipation of how he believes the new president will act, he's doing more and more to try to shore up some of the things that he thinks is important. It feels in some ways, some might see it as noble, but also feels like a mad scramble to in some ways protect legacy.
Yeah. And we will have to see how that
And I would
plays
say
out.
he's a changed man from the guy we saw, obviously, in his first term. And I also like to point out again that when he won, he said he served one term. So I'm sure that in his head all morning, looking at all of this, he's thinking to himself, whoa, you know, what have I done? What legacy do I have? What do I have here that's going to stand against? Because he had to sit there and listen to the president attack all of his signature policies without mentioning him by name.
Yeah. Well, certainly a huge inauguration, historic inauguration. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. And
thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching our special live coverage of President Donald Trump's inauguration. To read more about the swearing-in and ceremony and the president's first day in office, go to newsday.com. Thank you again.